Hey everyone, so there's a pretty big change coming to web security that honestly is flying under the radar for a lot of IT teams. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how SSL certificates work. And, if you're not ready for it, it could quietly take down some of your most critical systems.
And no, that's not just clickbait. This is a real question you should be asking. There's an industry-wide update to SSL certificates coming down the pike, and while it's all about making things more secure, it could absolutely have the unintended side effect of disconnecting your VPNs, your APIs, and a whole bunch of other services. The clock is definitely ticking on this one, and the deadline is firm.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get into what this client authentication thing even is. Then we'll look at the hard deadlines you absolutely need to circle on your calendar. After that, we'll pinpoint which systems are most at risk, and we'll wrap it all up with a clear, actionable migration plan to get you way ahead of the curve.
Okay, so first things first. To really get why this is such a big deal, we need to understand the tech behind it. So let's cut through the jargon and get right to the why of this whole change.
You can think of an EKU, that's extended key usage, as basically a job description written inside a certificate. It's a special little field that tells any system looking at it exactly what that certificate is allowed and not allowed to do. Two of the most common jobs you'll see are server authentication, or server auth, and client authentication, or client auth.
For the longest time, it was pretty common to just issue one single certificate that could do both jobs. It's kind of like having one master key that opens your office door and your front door at home. I mean, it's convenient, right? But from a security standpoint, not so great. So the whole industry is now shifting to a much cleaner model: dedicated certificates for dedicated jobs. One key for the office, a totally separate key for the house. It's all about making sure these digital keys are only used for their one specific intended purpose.
And listen, this isn't just one vendor deciding to do things differently. This is a big, coordinated shift pushed by the major players and standards bodies like the CA/Browser Forum. The goal here is really simple: lock down how certificates are used to reduce the risk of them being misused, which, in the end, makes the whole internet a little bit safer for everyone.
Okay, let's talk about the timeline, because these dates are set in stone and they are coming up faster than you think. There's really no wiggle room here.
So take a look at how this is rolling out. It kicks off in September 2025. That's when client auth stops being included by default. But the real drop-dead date is May 15th, 2026. On that day, it gets permanently ripped out of all new server certificates. And then just a month later, browsers like Google Chrome will just start flat-out blocking connections. The message is simple: you have to be fully migrated before June 2026, period.
So we know what's happening and we know when. But the real question, the one that actually matters, is what's going to break in your environment? Let's connect the dots from this technical change to the real-world systems you're probably managing every single day.
Right. This is where you really need to lean in. If you are using a public SSL certificate for any kind of client authentication, you are going to feel this. We're talking about your VPN access for remote workers suddenly failing. Your critical APIs and microservices that authenticate with certificates could just stop talking to each other. Any system that uses mutual TLS or MTLS for security is directly in the line of fire. Heck, even some of your older, legacy systems might be hard-coded to expect both of those functions from a single certificate.
And MTLS, that's a huge one. See, with normal web browsing, it's just the server that proves its identity to you. But with MTLS, it's a two-way street. Both the client and the server have to show their IDs using certificates before they trust each other. So, if your server suddenly shows up with a new certificate that's missing the client auth part of its job description, that two-way verification fails, and boom, the connection gets dropped.
So here's the bottom line, the nitty-gritty of it. It all comes down to a very specific technical check. That long string of numbers you see is the OID, the object identifier for client authentication. Think of it like a unique serial number for that specific job. Your systems are literally configured to look for this exact ID. After the deadline, new server certs just won't have it. The check will fail, and the authentication will be rejected. Simple as that.
Okay, that's the problem. And yeah, it's a big one. But it is totally manageable if you get out ahead of it with a plan. So let's switch gears and move from the problem to the solution. Let's talk strategy.
We can really break this down into 4 straightforward steps. First up, audit. You can't fix what you don't know is there, so you've got to go on a hunt and find every single system that depends on this dual-purpose certificate. Step 2, implement. This is where you build out the infrastructure to issue and manage your new, dedicated client certificates.
It's a whole new workflow, so you got to plan for it. Step 3, test. Please test. Before you touch anything in production, validate these new certs in a staging or dev environment. And finally, step 4, migrate. Get your production systems moved over, giving yourself plenty of cushion before those 2026 deadlines loom.
Now, there is a little bit of good news here. To make this whole transition smoother, some certificate authorities, like Sectigo and vendors such as Tristico, are going to continue offering these dual-purpose certificates right up until that final May 15, 2026 deadline. Now look, this is not a long-term solution. Think of it as valuable breathing room. It's a bridge that lets you do a proper, careful migration instead of a rushed, panicked one.
So here's what that smart path forward could actually look like. Don't wait around on this. Use the rest of this year to get those audits done. Then spend the first half of next year building out your new client cert infrastructure. You can start migrating some pilot non-critical apps in late 2025, and that gives you the first quarter of 2026 to finish all your production migrations. See, this turns a potential crisis into a totally manageable project.
And just to make sure nobody panics unnecessarily, let's be super clear about what is not affected by this change. Your standard company website just using HTTPS, you're fine. Any of your existing certificates, they'll keep working just fine until they expire. Dedicated SMIME certificates for email or code signing certs, totally separate, don't worry about them. And finally, this has absolutely nothing to do with the industry's push for shorter certificate lifetimes. That's a completely different conversation.
So we'll leave you with this question. When you boil it all down, this is about trust and verification in our digital lives. The industry is raising the bar and moving to a more secure, more explicit standard for how we establish that trust. The deadlines are set. The path forward is clear. The only question left is your infrastructure ready? Now's the time to find out.